You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 126. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how life with less alcohol is more fun than you think. I work with high achievers who struggle to drink a glass of wine without it turning into 2 bottles. I'm the one they call when they want to take it or leave it. So if you want to change your relationship with alcohol that doesn't involve counting days sober, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm talking to you if you dearly want to change. Right? You really want to learn how to moderate your drinking. You know it's the right relationship with alcohol for you. And maybe you are following along with the podcast, you're nodding along, you're taking notes, all the things. And yet you're too scared, right? You're too terrified to try. That's what I'm addressing today. I want to think about this. Why are you terrified? Why do we get terrified in these situations, right? When we really dearly want to be able to take it or leave it when we go to the pub tonight. Well, we're terrified often because we've had so much failure already. Right? We often think, I just can't take it anymore. In fact, we say that, right? I just can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. And then I often hear people say, all right, I guess it's to AA for me, which to me is 1 and 1, adding 1 and 1 together and getting 16. Because just because it hasn't worked before doesn't mean it won't work now, right? And just because moderating hasn't worked doesn't mean you have to go for full abstinence, especially if that's not what you want. If it's what you want, go for it. If it's not what you want, you don't have to go that way. And when we get into this position of feeling terrified, I think it's because we don't trust ourselves, actually. We might blame other things. We might say there's all this temptation, this, and this. But when it comes down to it, it's about us not trusting ourselves, which, by the way, is the main reason why people hold back from working with me. Right? They believe that what I will teach works. They see it works from my client testimonials. They have faith in me. They've often been following along the podcast for a good while. So if that's you, right, it's a well-tested approach. But then when push comes to shove, when it gets down to it, they don't trust themselves. I see this so often. What we say is things like, well, I would do it. I would absolutely go for this if I trusted myself. But because I don't trust myself, I don't believe I'm going to get the results. So why would I even bother, right? That's kind of the loop we get into. We say and see that something hasn't worked for us before. But then to make that seem worse, we then see someone else saying that this self-same thing worked for them, right? It helped them. So we know this approach actually works intellectually and logically. So then we figure there must be something wrong with us, right? So the approach works, and then maybe we think, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to really push myself. I'm not going to enjoy this, right? So maybe we reluctantly give it another go. But here's what happens. We're still laden with all the thoughts that this isn't going to work. This is a waste of time. None of this stuff has worked for me before. That other person, it worked for them, but they're not me. She doesn't have my life. He doesn't have my stress. Why am I doing this? This is dumb, right? We have all these thoughts, and then guess what happens? It doesn't work again. Only we are even more certain this time. We are even more certain that we are the problem, right? The issue is with us. Because if that recipe worked for all those other people and it still didn't work for me, even though I really said I was going to do this and I was going to really push myself through, I want you to hear the stress in my voice there, then it just must be me. I'm the problem here. See, I knew it. I knew it was a waste of time. Our brain runs around with abandon, right? Telling us all the reasons, screaming all the reasons why that unwanted result was actually inevitable and why we should never have tried. What on earth were you thinking? So of course, we then feel worse than ever and then feel even more terrified to try. This is what happens. I want you to see this. This is the hamster wheel we get on. So I'm going to be tackling this today. I'm going to be helping you to step off, to slow the hamster wheel down, and then we are going to step off. And then we are going to start taking action that serves us. When your brain is constantly barraging you with negative thoughts, things like, this isn't going to work, you're so stupid, you're a screw up, and you're feeling negative emotions as a result of that, right? When you're saying to yourself, you're so dumb, you're not probably feeling that great, right? When we're doing that, it makes sense that with these thoughts and these feelings, guess what? We're going to want to drink and dull all of that out. It makes sense that what we're telling ourselves about why we can't change is going to be the reason why we continue to not change. Because who wants to think I'm a failure? Who wants to think I don't make good choices? Who wants to think I got it all wrong again? Who wants to think I'm never going to learn? That stuff is so hard to deal with. So no wonder you're going to choose to drown it out with booze temporarily. And people do this with food, scrolling, shopping, all the things. It's kind of like we're holding our life at bay because we just can't deal with that. But your thoughts are just your thoughts. They are just sentences in your brain. They are words in your brain. If you are not getting your desired result, you need to change your thought. It really can be as simple as that. Instead of thinking, this is never going to work, what can you think instead that is not going to have you dragging yourself along thinking this isn't going to work? Right? And I'm not saying here we want to go into positive Polly and we're going to say it always works brilliantly. I believe in me. I'm not talking about that. What thing can you choose instead of this isn't going to work? Because that is really, the lowest common denominator there. Perhaps you might want to think something like, I see I'm feeling scared about this, but that's only because I've failed so many times before. I'm going to give it another go. Something like that, right? Where we acknowledge where we are. We don't kind of tell ourselves a lie that we won't believe and act out on. And we just give ourselves permission to start taking action. Changing your thought is so key because our thoughts drive our feelings, which means we are the ones creating the terror in our bodies that we are feeling. When we're terrified to try, it can feel like we're a deer in the headlights, right? There's confusion and fear everywhere. I mean, I sort of feel, for me, myself, I feel like I go into like a stone statue, absolutely rooted to the spot, and just have no idea. It's like my mind, goes blank when I'm faced with something that I want to do that feels big, but I'm terrified about. And yes, this was me a few years ago. This was me where you are now. When it comes to, am I going to be able to go into the kitchen and prepare dinner this evening without pouring the wine? Right? Simple as that. That was a big terror I had. Here is a really great and cool way to get yourself into taking action, and it works if you're in this kind of terror moment, and this works for all areas of your life. I use it for all sorts of things. It's simply to be willing to be underwhelmed. Right? A key way why you may be terrified to try, especially in light of past failure, is you may think you're facing a mountain, right? I tried it before and now all of a sudden it's just getting harder and harder and harder. Right? I failed before, I fell down at the first hurdle, and now I've got to do that again. I know it's going to be just really hard. Right? And if in the past you weren't even able to do the simple stuff, right? For instance, you weren't even able to decide what you wanted to have on your drink plan because you had all this drama about, well, I shouldn't have to plan my drinks, right? Let's say you couldn't even make a decision there. How on earth, you might think, am I going to be able to get to my goal? I mean, that's one of the key things Anna teaches. I'm not even willing to do that. There's no way I'm going to get to where I want to, right? This is how our brain goes. It looks and feels so out of reach. So instead, I want you to be super, super patient with yourself. We're going to build up successes over time. People talk about this with projects, right? Break it down, eat the elephant, bite by bite, or that sort of thing. But I really want you to do this to the point where whatever mini goal you're setting for yourself today, it maybe is utterly underwhelming. So for instance, if you have been invited to go out to a party, if you are terrified of going to that party all night when you're aiming to moderate, don't go for the full 5 hours. Maybe go for half an hour. You might say, what sort of party experience is that? I mean, really, right? But do you think you could decide what you're going to drink in that half an hour and go for the half hour and leave, right? Just think about conceptually, is that something you're willing to do? Does that underwhelm you? Does that feel doable? If you've been drinking 1.5 bottles a night for the last 3 years, I don't want you to start going alcohol free from one day to the next. No, that's going to feel a huge challenge. Take the amount down by maybe half a glass, even perhaps a few sips. Make it something so minuscule you might think it's hardly worth bothering with. But the fact is that you know you're doing something different. You know you're not drinking the full 1.5 bottles. You know you're drinking the 1.5 bottles minus maybe half a glass or a few sips. So you do know that that's happening. But the beauty of this is if it feels so insignificant, you're unlikely to not feel terrified about it. You're probably willing to be able to give it a go, right? So if you are that person who drinks 1.5 or whatever your number is, and you say, I'm just going to take it down by a few sips, by half a glass, quarter of a glass, whatever it is, I'm just going to maybe ditch that down the sink to start with, and I'm going to drink the rest. Does that feel doable? Yeah, probably, right. And see, what's happening here is at least you are now taking action. You're not telling yourself, I can't do this. You're not saying, I don't know what to do. And you are also seeing a more optimistic side to your story. And that's something we can take pride in. So be willing to be underwhelmed. Give that a go. It's actually a lot of fun. I also, as another strategy, want to make the case for evaluation here. I talk about evaluation a lot. I cannot underscore how important it is. If you have tried some other way to change your relationship with alcohol, right? Maybe you've just started listening to me and you've tried something else and it really didn't work, and that's making you think, this isn't working for me. It could be that the approach you were trying isn't optimal for you. And this is one of the reasons why I love one-on-one coaching. I love working with people, love working with you sort of individually to customize this for your life. If you are somebody, for instance, who drinks to keep the party going, but everything you're being taught is about how to stop drinking when you're home alone, there's going to be a mismatch there. So I'll just say that. There may be a mismatch there, which is why I think it's important that we understand what your goal is and that we create the path that is going to get you to your desired goal. But even if it is the case that what you've been learning maybe isn't necessarily the right approach for you, there are learnings everywhere if we're willing to look for them. And you can prove this to yourself already. If you feel you are learning, let's just think about that. In any scenario, for anything in your life, if you feel you are learning, guess what? You're going to be willing to take more action. Yeah? I mean, this comes all the way down to when we're learning maths at school, up to driving, up to, sewing. It doesn't matter what it is. And if you feel like you're learning, you're more willing to take action. And if you're taking action, guess what? You're not behaving as though you're too terrified to try, because the action blocks that, right? We're actually in action taking mode. So I want you to take something, I want you to consider something that you tried before in the past, which didn't work, or where you didn't get your desired results, maybe immediately. I want you to think about that thing and write at least 3 things you learned from that situation. Then for each of those 3 things that you learned from that situation, I want you to write what action you took as a result of knowing that. And you might not have done this at the time. You might just have, something didn't work and then you took action, you took corrective action, right? You just sort of skipped over the identifying what the thing was. But I want you to go through this. I want you to look at the results you got, the 3 things you learned, and then the 3 actions you took. And if you do that, you did that, you were willing to apply their learning, yeah? I want you to be as specific as possible with this. I want you to see how that you've already been doing this in your life. You can try this for any area of your life. And let me give you an example. It's a driving example. Yes, Anna and her cars. Again, I haven't given you a driving example, little story for a little bit. All right, so do with parking again, of course. Yes, I love parking. Anyway, when I was young and I was learning to drive, 17, my dad very kindly helped teach me. One of the things he would do would be to stand in front of the car and kind of spin his finger. And he would say, to the right or left hand down or right hand down. And he just kind of spin the finger. And I'm like, and I would freak out. It's like, what is going on here? I know it was helpful. It was trying to be helpful. But to me, it was like I just had no concept of what was going on. I found it very hard. It didn't help at all. All these years later, I am a better parker than I ever was. But still, it's one of those things I still freak out if I'm kind of, if it's a busy area. And now, funnily enough, my husband does the same thing that my dad used to do. Maybe this is a man thing. I don't know. Write in and tell me, all you male drivers out there. And I'm telling you, when he does this, it's like my brain explodes. My husband can just very gently start to move his hand, as in thinking he's being helpful, that I should move the wheel one way or the other. And all I do is I go back to 17-year-old Anna, and my brain explodes with all the, oh no, not this again. I don't understand. I can't do this. I'm confused. Help. I can't do this. This isn't working. Right? I don't know what I'm doing. And those thoughts just come. I'm actually not controlling that. It's just sort of an immediate instinctive reaction. For years, that was my instinctive reaction. And what I would do is I'd end up probably putting the handbrake on and saying in a sulk or a strut, well, you do it then, right? You can do it better than me. Now, since coaching and since learning how my thoughts are creating my results, when somebody does this, and yes, complete strangers will walk up and start wiggling their fingers in the air to try and help me park. That is now my cue to actually just stop, to just sit still, do a reset, remember where I am, remember what I'm doing, pay no attention to the hand waving, and then I can sort of get back into my zone of focus and I can complete the maneuver brilliantly, right? With no stress, nothing. I have changed my thought about the hand waving. It means nothing to me. It doesn't mean I go into freak out mode. And now I empower myself with how I'm thinking about the situation. And I have a handy dandy thought replacement ready to stick in my brain at that point. And that is, take it 1 second at a time, Anna. You can do this. That's all I have to think. Boom, no problem. So I want you to look for the learnings like this. They are everywhere. I also want to offer another reason why you may be terrified to try. And this is sort of a bit left field, but I definitely see it. It could be because you're terrified that you might be successful. Because what if you get so that you stick to your plans and you commit to yourself? Then what does that mean for the rest of your life? It would mean a life with less or no alcohol. And this is where our ability to commit to ourselves, our ability to commit to our goal is ahead of our thoughts about what this means for our life. And again, this is one of the reasons why when I teach this to my clients, I teach us to commit to our goals in a way that is very supportive rather than in a resistant way, right? So that we don't get into this struggle between, oh, if I do this, I'm just going to be basically making a life of misery because I'm deciding to drink less, right? Because what happens is maybe we think, okay, I'm able now to commit to my plan for just a couple of drinks. And I know this is logically what I want, but then it hits you, you start thinking what that's going to mean for the rest of your life. And yikes. And perhaps you have all these thoughts come up. It seems boring. What's that going to mean for my social life? How will I even maintain it? Maybe I'm going to rebel against myself. Right? Maybe you're not actually sure that that's what you want for yourself. And so then when this happens, you go into this terrified to try spin in case you are successful. So just be aware of that. One of the things I teach you is that we like our reasons for everything we do so that we don't get into this. But perhaps that might be the terror of success might be behind your terror to try. Lastly, I want to offer that if you stop drinking over your feelings, you're going to fully experience your life, right? Fully. And you're going to find it's 50-50. Sometimes it's going to feel great. Other times, not so much. It could be 70-30, 80-20 at times, right? There are bad patches and there are good patches. There are times when we feel really full of ourselves and there are times when we feel really scared, and that's okay. Sometimes we do have these situations that we're scared of and we think we shouldn't be scared. And so then we don't give ourselves a chance to be courageous because we think something has gone wrong with ourselves. Or we tell ourselves things like, I need to not drink. I really need to not drink. And then we think, I won't drink. I'm not going to drink. But then we end up drinking. So we realize that what we're telling ourselves is a lie, right? We often tell ourselves a lie. And then we think it really looks like we have a problem. And then I'm even more scared. So if I say to myself, I was reading someone writing this morning, it's stopping today. That's it. I'm really not going to do this. I don't need a drink. I don't want to drink. And then of course they follow through if it doesn't work. And then we're right back to, well, why did I tell myself that stuff? I mean, it was nonsense. So the next time you try, the next time you tell yourself that, you aren't going to believe it. Right? So this is then we get more and more scared that we're just not going to be able to do this. When you embrace that it's okay to feel scared, it's okay to feel doubt, overwhelmed, and all those other things, and not run to the other room and drink, that's when you're kind of like, okay, what are we going to do now? Right? We're into curiosity mode. We're into ready to take action. What else can I do with this precious life? If I'm willing to feel all the feelings, if I'm willing to be terrified and to still take action, think about that. Think about how that would change your life. If you're willing to feel embarrassed, if you're willing to feel doubtful, if you're willing to feel resigned about this, if you're willing to feel terrified and to still try, to still keep taking action, you're going to learn that being afraid does not make you stop. You're going to learn that whatever you're feeling, you are unstoppable. Thank you for listening to the show. It's really wonderful and exciting to see so many of you actually downloading this. It's really going up. I'm so thrilled. I'm so honored to bring the show and that you take the time for yourself, because I do this for you. This is all about teaching you how to learn about your brain and how you have the control to change your relationship with alcohol. But now it's time to decide. I really want to put this in because we can go along in consuming mode. I'm consuming all the information. I'm listening to all the podcasts. Are you prepared to just let yourself struggle with this for however long? Right? You're going to go through life dreading holidays, dreading evenings out, evenings in alone, not sure if you can trust yourself. Or are you going to learn how to trust yourself around alcohol, to moderate your consumption so you can take it or leave it, starting right now? That's where I come in. If you're curious about whether coaching can help, then let's talk. The very first thing we'll do is have a consultation call. It's 1 hour deep dive into you. I'll take you through a series of questions to help define where you are right now and where you want to be and what is standing in your way. And then I will build a game plan to get you there. You get to ask me questions and to feel out if you think I would be a right fit for us to work together. I typically coach people who have 3 things in common, which is they're deeply committed to their growth, they're willing to be uncomfortable to get where they want to go, and they are all in on themselves. Is that you? If so, go to 90dayslater.co and click on the book a call button at the top and we will chat. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.